Hi, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where I deliver content intended to inspire, educate, and motivate. Engage with me online at elleruss.com and on social media. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, just a quick 1-minute announcement to let you know about my virtual courses and free masterclasses. I have courses and free masterclasses based on both of my books. I have the Ultimate Thyroid Course. This is your answer to solving any thyroid issue, whether it be Hashimoto's, radioactive iodine, thyroidectomy after thyroid cancer, or just general hypothyroidism. Reverse T3 issues as well. It's an incredible value at 17 modules and 29 hours of content with amazing guest expert tutorials. I also offer the Ultimate Confidence Course. That is 15 modules and 14 hours with also a few guest expert tutorials. An incredible value, and I have free masterclasses on both of those topics as well. Visit elleruss.com to learn more. Hey there, Hanna. Welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So am I. Thank you for having me.
So, holistic financial coach. A lot of people would be like, what the hell?
I get a little like question mark face. Yeah. Huh?
Yeah. So before we get into what that is, and I mean, I think everybody, and especially since it's, still sort of the new year, people are wanting to turn it around. We've had a rough couple of years where some people were impacted financially and or decided to change their life as a result of the pandemic, which might put them in a different financial space of moving towards entrepreneurship or something maybe new and different in the money arena. So before we get into your coaching and holistic financial arena, tell us, how did you get into this where money became your thing?
Yeah, because I needed it myself and I could not find it any other place. I come from finance. Yeah, as most things, like I'm sure, like with the work that you've done, there's a track there where like there was a moment where I'm making an assumption for you, but like, wasn't there a moment where you're like, I really need this, 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 and this. I'm not finding it. And then the realization, oh, that means I need to make that. And that's exactly what happened. And I think that not just that I need to make that, but that the impetus was on me to provide this. And that became a big deal for me. I definitely, I've never been a big spender. Like I never have to have the fanciest shoes or the splashiest little car or like big screen TVs or go out to eat all the time. So I never quite understood why I was always sort of right on the razor's edge with my money. I had an okay job. But I was always like 2 days late on rent, right? So I was like,
so you were like paycheck to paycheck kind of thing?
Paycheck, just like everybody else, right? And I did not understand what the problem was. Like I was keeping myself up all night, doing the math over and over and over in my head. And right around my 40th birthday, I got kind of sick of it. So I decided I was going to get myself educated. Like clearly I'm missing something. So I reached out to the financial services world, which is a pretty easy pick, right? Financial services, money, that kind of a thing. And I was pretty quickly recruited into it, which is what happens when you get into the financial services world for the education. You're going to get recruited. You're going to get a sales pitch at the very least. And I was pretty quickly fast-tracked to become a financial advisor. And that's not impressive. They'll fast-track just about anybody to be a financial advisor. And I very quickly got the education, like I got the money mechanics, and realized that it wasn't enough. Like it wasn't enough for me and it wasn't enough for my clients, my financial services clients that I was, providing life insurance to. And there again, like I had that other realization. I was like, okay, I need to find something else. So I spent about 6 months out in the world looking for something, a program, a class, something that would combine the money mechanics plus like what amounts to soft skills, like problem solving and decision making, that sort of a thing, to change my relationship with money. And I remember one meeting I had with two of my mentors in the financial services world, and I said, and these were, I don't know if Elle, if you've ever said something and not realized how true it is until the words come out of your mouth. I said, I need help disconnecting my self-worth from my finances. And they said, this is what we have. We can teach you how to make a whole bunch of money, which of course doesn't work out. And there was another meeting, like maybe 6 months later, where I said, look, my clients can't keep to a budget. What do I do? And they said, basically your clients, eventually they're just going to have to do what you tell them to do. And at that point, my financial services career was over. That I could not do that anymore. I couldn't just tell people what to do and cash checks. That did not feel right to me. I could not find what I needed in the world. So as I said a minute ago, I had to build it. And the build of the curriculum took about 2 straight years. And I did most of it in secrets. Like I wasn't telling my financial services world or even my family that that's what I was doing.
Okay, I want to pause right there because
yes.
I just want to highlight that is something that I preach about. And not to say that, and again, not making this assumption, but to say that this does relate to not sharing your ideas with downers or other people who might project a lack of confidence onto you while you're doing a new thing that may be risky or you're not sure. You know what I mean? I wrote my second book practically in secret with like 2 people knowing about it. It actually my first one too. So I'm very much of that. It's like, I don't like talk about it, do it. First of all, stop talking, do, but also maybe stop talking because the more you're putting it out, the more feedback you have to get, and you're not going to like all that feedback. And so to avoid that, just wait till you're done. That's kind of like, that's what that reminded me of when you said that, you know what I mean?
Now I tell everybody what I'm doing because that's part of like my mission is to like teach people how to talk about money. To do that, I need to model that. But at the very beginning, this was for me, right? I was still trapped into that mindset that we have that we don't talk about our money. Like I was doing this so I could get myself squared away, so I could feel comfortable with my money and have clarity and know what the hell I was doing, right? So I didn't at the very beginning, like the first maybe 8 months to a year of building the curriculum, I was building this for me. I had no intention of ever teaching this to anybody else because I was like, everybody else has it together. I don't know if like that's most of what I hear from my clients. It looks like everybody else has it together. Well, they don't. But so through my financial services, which I was still sort of like tacitly attached to, I was starting to work with some people outside of financial services. Like, let's just meet for coffee and talk. So I call these my guinea pigs. These were like my first 10 clients and client couples. And I don't think they know to this day how deeply they affected my business, like how much they developed that curriculum, how much they helped me fine tune it and change it and build it specifically for them. And of course, I wasn't charging them, right? Because it was at that time, we could probably consider this just a little collection of hacks. And then I took on my first paid client. It was an accident. It was a shock. It was like, you're the financial advisor who talks to people about money in a different way. I want you to work with my grown daughter and her husband. And I did. And it was I can't even tell you how like someone's going to pay me for this, which like I had to lay down for a day afterwards. And I'm like, oh, I think this is a business. And it was like starting that at that moment, I started to bring on paid clients. And like the curriculum is still changing and evolving, and I'm still bringing, ideas on all the time. But that 2 years was probably the most growth I've done as a human being since I was a little tiny child. Like since we do a lot of growing when we're tiny, but it was so good and it was so impactful. And every time I tested a tool, I came back with this is not working or it's working. And if it's not working, I left it aside. If it was working, it's still in the curriculum today. So I built my curriculum with my clients. Did that sort of explain? Sorry, I went on for a little while.
No, I love that so much. And let's get into that because, you had sort of this hardcore, like the math was there. You'd been doing the math.
Heck yeah, that's easy stuff. Yeah.
Right. So this is, then you throw in the word like holistic, right? That's more than math. You're basically, you talk about teaching people how to trust themselves. So yes. Let's talk a little bit about some of those tools. And I don't know what the first one might be for people to understand the concept of going beyond just numbers and a financial planner to put stuff in a 401k or whatever. And what else are we talking about here?
We are talking. So we're not visual right now, but if you hold up your hands about a foot apart with your palms facing each other, that's my spectrum. I talk about the spectrum of the curriculum. So let's say your left hand is that's money mechanics. That's the difference between a stock and a bond. It's how compound interest works. It's how to pay off your debt really fast. Money mechanics are not going to change anybody's life. They're fantastic information. It's an important part of my curriculum. It's probably about a solid third of my curriculum. It is not impactful, right? Just knowing the difference between, like, I could teach you the difference between a stock and a bond, which I'm sure you already know. I could teach anybody that in 15 seconds and you'll understand it, but it won't change your life. So we've got that at that end of the spectrum. And then on the other end of the spectrum, your right hand is the soft skills. So this is problem solving, decision making, reducing things like procrastination, which directly and indirectly affect our finances. For couples, and I work with a lot of couples, this is the conversation around money, like feeling connected, feeling safe in those conversations, and what it takes to have your finances work the way you want them to work. And I'm not saying you, Elle, I'm saying y'all. For you, anybody who's listening, is that you need the whole spectrum. And what we've done for so many decades is we've focused on the mechanics only. And it's not as impactful as you think it is. And the problem with just focusing on mechanics is now we have the internet, and all of this information is available for free on the internet. I make no bones about the fact that my clients don't need me for the financial mechanics. Like, there's some YouTube channels that I think are fantastic. Like, there's one that's like a little girl who teaches macroeconomics. It's fantastic, right? So we don't.
She's going places.
She is.
She's already there.
She's already there. She doesn't need us to tell her she's going places because she's there. So like, the money mechanics are crazy important and integrated into everything that we do, but they must be integrated. They must be part of our lives, and we have to be able to implement. And that's where the soft skills comes in. To budget, to make an adaptive, personalized budget that will fit to your life, you need the whole spectrum. We can't pothole and just do one or two things. We need the whole dang thing. So for the most part, I start my clients on the soft skill side, and I tell them, I am super clear with this. I'm like, I'm either going to move too fast or too slow, especially at the beginning. I'm going to feel like I'm moving too slow. And you're going to say things like, why aren't we talking about money? And I will say things like, we are always talking about money. So because of the holistic side of this, money. Everything is money. Every single part of our life touches our money, right, either directly or indirectly. So we respect that. And the concepts that
unless you're foraging for your own food, which,
And then we have a different, like, to our brains, we are still doing that.
There's still money. You might trade the neighbor or a bird.
Exactly. Yeah. So I essentially, the whole curriculum, all of my work with folks is right around two core concepts. The first one is being aware of your own behavior without judgment, because we could all be aware of our behavior with judgment. Nobody needs my help to do that. And the second one is being resilient, or the other way I say that is to trust yourself. There is no difference between being resilient and trusting yourself. That they're distinguishable, because if you know you got your own back, then you can make all sorts of good decisions because you know that you have your own strengths to fall back on. And we are never, ever taught how to do that with our money. And I think that's horrible.
Actually, like the most important part is what you're talking about right now. Yeah.
So these two things, awareness without judgment and being able to trust ourselves. When my clients can do that, then, like, let's say towards the end of working with let's say we're getting to the point where we're talking about financial products, which doesn't happen with every single client, but we're talking about, like, should I put, a great example is like an inheritance. Should I put this inheritance in? Should I put it in? Should I buy a business? Should I buy a home, like an investment property? Should I put it in a mutual fund? What should I do? My job isn't to tell them what to do, of course. And because I don't sell product anymore, I think that's a pretty clear, what's that term? Conflict of interest. My job is to teach them about each one of those options available to them, and then they get to make their own decisions. And they feel comfortable doing so because, one, they trust themselves, and two, they know how their money works. We've built a system using that observation without judgment. We've built them a money system that they can just, like, this month is on easy mode. That means that people can think further and further and further ahead in time. So that And we're always going to practice those concepts, the two big ones I just talked about, and any other concept. We will always, always, always practice on non-financial things, which people get like, why are we talking about dishes, Hannah? Like, we're practicing this concept on dishes, chores, whatever, but we're going to use that concept later on. So let's say I've been working with them and they've been patient with me as we've gone through 3 sessions of not talking about money at all. And then we start to talk about money. I say, okay, for tracking our spending, we're going to use that concept we talked about earlier, that being aware of your behavior without judgment, that awareness piece. And they're like, Hannah, we already know how to do that. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's because we practiced it on several other things earlier. And by practicing on non-financial things first, we're keeping the risk really low, and we're slowing down the process, slowing down thought process slowing down decision making without stopping it, is where we're at. Because our brains, especially in crisis, either make decisions way, way, way too fast. Like, that's where habits, like financial habits, are. Or we make decisions way too slowly to the point where we've stopped. And that's where that paralysis comes in. So we kind of want to have some thoughtfulness and some intentionality and some slowness built in. And once people can do that, man, they can do anything. It's pretty amazing.
I want to just say, I understand the embarrassment and money denial of a situation 100%. I have been in trouble with the IRS. I have had issues, you know what I mean? Like my past was a bad, do you know what I mean? And so I really understand. And if anyone's listening, what I also want to point is how awesome and open you are and how important the non-judgment is. Because if you've been in that situation, you have been judged or judge yourself in the reflection of others and how they've handled certain things. And when you don't know anything and it's not your interest, here's the thing, my father was an options trader, in the stock spheres. I still can't really tell you what it's about, because you know what? It's I'm blocked. My mind is right. But that's okay. But you have those personalities that go through life, and then you're trying to handle money, and then you sort of become averse. You want to,
That's
totally
financial trauma.
And then it sucks, because then you've got to go deal with the cleanup of what that brings. And so it is a tough space to be in, and to have a coach, a person like you who can, you know what I mean? And who understands it because you were there. So I just want to commend you, and also just point out to the audience, I've been there, you know what I mean? Before any success happened, and it sucks. I understand. I'm empathetic. You know what I mean? I get that. And that's a big part of it, is being embarrassed and denial.
It is. Yeah. And it's not that level of embarrassment of that shame that we hide in ourselves about our money, and the isolation that comes with that, the loneliness. I have my clients play this little game sometimes. I'm like, next time you go to a big grocery store, I want you to look around that grocery store, and I want you to think about 95% of those people are having the same conversations with themselves that you are. 95% of those people are self-doubting. They're like, why am I even in this grocery store? We can't afford this. If I do this, I can't do that. They've got all this chatter going on. They've got all that stuff. I don't care what they're driving. I don't care what they're wearing. I don't care what they're putting in their grocery cart. Everybody, because I work with mostly high income folks, and their level of shame and guilt around that is I'm making a good amount of money. Why don't we have any savings? Why can't we have a conversation about whether or not to go out to dinner? We have enough money. That didn't fix anything. So there's that shame that we have, that we always feel isolated because of where our finances are at, is deeply part of our survival, right? Being perceived as being part of the group, part of the tribe, part of the herd, it is not to be understated how deeply, deeply connected. It's not keeping up with the Joneses. That's a different thing.
Yes,
this is, I don't want to be abnormal. I can't be seen as abnormal. And this presents itself in lots and lots of ways.
Or be seen as stupid, dumb, right?
Or be
seen as in this way, oh, you're an idiot. That's another, right? Another, definitely something I felt for sure.
Yeah, seriously, what's wrong with me, right? That kind of a thing. That is an incredibly common response. And I hear it all the time. More the higher income someone gets, the more that guilt and shame comes up, because I should have this together. I have no excuses.
Right. Now I have no excuses. It's even harder. But the story, right? So here's the thing. Let's talk about that. Why someone why this is why the mechanics aren't the thing, because why
Mhm.
someone can go from continually increasing income and still having the issue.
Right. And
You know?
then we could look at that from a mechanical perspective, and that's called lifestyle creep or lifestyle inflation, where our lifestyle just keeps going smushing up, and we can say stop doing that. Now we're back to shame and judgment, right? And that is one of those common. I'm doing common like wisdom. I'm doing wisdom with my air quotes. Pieces of financial wisdom is like fight lifestyle creep. Focus on what you need, not what you want. By the way, for anybody listening, you can let go of then just focus on what I need, not what I want. You can stop using that. That is a garbage tool. What we don't do is we don't evaluate those common pieces of financial wisdom that we've said and heard millions of times. We don't stop and think, is this actually a good scaffold, structure, whatever? Is this actually a good way to be handling my money? Is this even the best way? Is this the only way? We don't. We just hook, line, and sinker, like keep trying to do this. Like restriction is one of my favorite things to talk about, because restriction is pretty much the first thing people will go to. We gotta lock this down. No more spending. We're done, right? And restriction does not work.
And why not?
It doesn't work because it has an effect on our brains. Restriction, we don't like to be cornered. We're still animals. I think we forget that. Like we don't like to have our resources taken away from me. Like, don't get between me and my food. Don't get between me and my babies. Don't get between me and my mate. Don't take things away from me. And our brains don't know the difference if somebody else is restricting us or if we are restricting ourselves. Our brains don't care. And eventually our brains, if they're functioning normally, our brains will do one of two things, if not both. It's going to get rebellious and it's going to get resentful. And that's where the rebellion is, where that shame and judgment comes in. Like, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyways. And then, that's resentment. And then the rebellion piece is where we just spend, like we get to, call it the effort zone. Like, you've spent too much already this month and it doesn't matter anymore. Nothing matters. So forget it. I'm just going to spend everything I've got. I'm just going to go out to the movies or go on a trip. Right. So those are a natural, like I see that and people are like, what's wrong with you? Like, your brain is functioning normally. That rebellion and resentment tells me how deeply that restriction, how deeply like you keep trying the restriction and it keeps having this effect. What we never ever do is we're like, is restriction the right tool? Because it's not. What we keep doing is we keep evaluating ourselves. So and
it's the same with diet. Like, I just want to pop
it's exactly the same with diet.
For all the paleo primer part of listeners from my first book and in general, I mean, that's what we talk about. Like, if anyone asks me about paleo primal nutrition, I said, look, here's the thing. Yeah. At first, just don't eat, just fuck calories. So don't count shit.
Yeah.
Just take the canola oil out of your pantry or start with just a list of good foods. If you want to even overeat that list, I'd rather have you overeat that list of good foods than to eat any of this garbage over here. Right. Yeah. So because the restriction thing, again, you got to, small changes. And also when you restrict that hard in all of those ways, and that's where people do the like triple Linden of restrictions, where they're like, I'm going to do a boot camp, then film it, do a YouTube channel on it, and then do 800 calories a day for 5 weeks. And you're like, it never works, right? Like you said, it doesn't work. Because that's like 5,000 restrictions, right?
It is. And then we double down on that restriction with the failure. We fail ourselves. Like, I couldn't even do the simplest thing. We try to like bring in like accountability, right? Or we try to like make it public. So we're trying to leverage embarrassment when we do that. And that is manipulation. Like, if somebody else was trying to leverage embarrassment over you, you would quickly identify that as embarrassment, but as manipulation rather. But when we do it to ourselves, we feel like we're doing a good thing. Same with punishments and rewards. And so people try all of these tactics. And what we never, ever do is we don't evaluate if that tactic, if that strategy, we evaluate ourselves, right? And so when I'm working as we're system building, which is part of like building good routines around money and then eventually building a budget, the B word, like we evaluate the system, not you. And I say this to my clients over and over and over again. And I'll frequently say, have I brainwashed you yet? And they're frequently like, yes, Hannah. And I will keep saying it. We are evaluating the system, not you, because we have to build this system. I would assume it's exactly the same as it is with diet. We have to build this to fit your life. We can't expect your life to just magically fit into this pre-made prescriptive budget system, diet, whatever.
Why do people find budgets so hard to keep? And I know you have some tips for what you can do instead if you do feel that way.
Especially prescriptive budgets like that. Spend 20% of your income on housing, 10% on food, whatever, that kind of thing. Their availability makes us think like they should be effective. Like just because there's 12,000 of them for free online right now. I'll tell you a little story because I like to tell stories. Elle. So let's do a little thought experiment. Let's say, Elle, that you're teaching a class on budgeting with one of these prescriptive budgets. You are a fantastic presenter. You're super excited. This budget has been built by world-class economists. And your class participants, you have 100 class participants, and they are excited and they are motivated and they are smart. So you teach this class and then you check back in with them in 2 weeks. At the 2-week mark of your 100 original participants, how many do you think are still keeping with that prescriptive budget?
I mean, I would have to say just because of this conversation that we're having in general, very little, like 3.
It's about half that will report that they're keeping with it.
Okay, that's actually better than I thought.
Notice the way I said that, though. It's about half that will report that they're keeping with it. Whether or not they're actually, many of them will have said that they're keeping with it, and they're not because of what we've talked about just a little bit ago, and that's the shame.
Yeah.
So let's say you check in at the 1 year mark. How many do you think have kept with it?
Truly kept with it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Goose egg. Absolutely nobody. Absolutely nobody has kept with it. Nobody. Mm-hmm. So you, as the presenter, you've got
so budgets. No one likes budget.
No, it doesn't work for anybody. Right. So you identified it perfectly. The problem was with the budget. It's not with your class participants. You've got 100% failure rate. Do you know statistically, like that's super rare to have like 100% failure rate that's pretty clear data. So you can tell where the problem is, right? You're the presenter. You did great. If you were like, they didn't like the color of your shirt that day, you would have still had some people sticking in. If their class participants hadn't been serious, which is what my financial services world was asking me, your people aren't very serious. There would have still been somebody hanging in there. You identified, where's the actual problem here, Elle? It's the budget, right?
Yeah.
It's the budget because we have
it seems like it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go talk to each one of those 100 participants. Where do they think the problem is?
Well, I guess I can't, all I'm imagining is myself in the situation going, well, it's boring and annoying. Like, would I be the one of the people that would finally do it if I signed up for this? Yes, I would. But I can see and have been in the position before of just like, it's not worth it. It's not going to change anything. I don't want to bother. So it's too hard. I can't figure it out. It doesn't make sense. I can see that kind of stuff.
Yep. So for the most part, most of those folks are going to say that they're the problem. Right. And after a couple of those quote unquote failures, they're going to stop trying. So by the time my clients get to me, they have probably tried just 4 times to keep a budget. And after that, they just stop trying. Right. It doesn't work. Yeah, I'm not good at this. They give up. Of course they do, because that's another like instinct that we have in us is if something hurts us, we're going to avoid it. And that's where like things like procrastination come in. Procrastination, avoidance, and apathy are all protective strategies, not personality defects. And we talk deeply about that with most of my clients. My clients are like, I've had people show me the stack of bills that they have not gone through, right? Yeah. That kind of thing. Like they're trying to shame themselves in front of me, like in our first 2 sessions or something. Look at this, like, Hannah.
You can't do it. I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah. So that's why we work on the soft skills first. And I'll tell you, it's kind of automatic. I don't want to make it sound like it's guaranteed, but as we work through the soft skills and we kind of unpick and we get kind of skeptical about the financial quote unquote wisdom that we have running through our heads kind of all the time, people just magically change their spending behavior before we even talk about money. So they're already starting to make better decisions. They're slowing down their decision making because we've been talking about those tools. And a lot of the concepts and tools that I teach are literally just games. And many of those games could be transferred with no adaptation right to kids. Kids are ultimately my target, right? I want to make changes in parents and adults' lives so that they can pass on these good adaptive tools to their kids. And they do it without trying, because you can't sit down with a kid. Okay, kid, I'd like to teach you today about compound interest. Nothing's going to stick there. Nothing's going to, but the problem solving decision making that we talk about, that's where the change happens. So
what I love so much about what you do is it's like you are the functional medicine practitioner, right? The money, like the integrative physician, right? Well, the word holistic too, there's holistic integrative physicians, right? And again, like it's looking at the whole, it's not just looking at blood work, one side of it, the mechanics, right? The biology of money, right? You're looking at all of these different stories, the shame and things around it, which is so important. And those are the things that I had to identify. One of the things I had to identify when I was having all of those issues was the difference between like realizing how incongruent I was. I was treating money as if it wasn't consequential, important, something I cared about. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I was treating it that way, but I didn't feel that way about it. That's not really how I truly feel about it. So I was completely treating it in the opposite way, and in which I had actually felt about it. It would have been different had I felt differently about money and was acting like that, or not acting, that's weird, but just being or having the story about money. So I know how important it is to look at these aspects to finally ignite even some motivation.
Yeah. We kind of
it peeled it back for me. Like it made me,
you
know what I mean? I guess it shed a little bit for me to understand it in those ways, to dissect it, like on this holistic way, to finally be able to go, okay. We got to move forward.
Yeah. And that's one thing I get asked this on occasion, especially like in my info sessions, is do people really need coaching? And I'll be honest, my answer is no, probably not.
Really? I would say yes.
Here's the thing. Even
if it's a YouTube video, but then you could...
like, that's the thing. It's like, we can get coaching from lots of places, but coaching in like maybe sports coaching, maybe like an elite athlete could probably get themselves and keep themselves at a level of elite athleticism, no problem. But having a coach makes it so much easier. You're leveraging that coach's experience. You're leveraging their depth of knowledge. And like when I'm working with my clients, we'll probably, like with one couple of one person, they're only going to see half the curriculum. I have a whole bunch of other stuff that they didn't need in their life, right? So a coach can speed up the process. Like I'll tell my clients, like, yeah, you could probably do this in 10 years, 20 years on your own, because I'm not therapy, right? There's parts of therapy that we have to get from one place to therapy is medicine. The coaching that I do, it's just taking the work that you could have done in, let's say 15 years, and we're smushing it down into 6 months, right? So I'm optimizing it with my clients in that way. But it is absolutely like that 6 months is kind of like, it can be kind of whiplashy for how much change we can do in that amount of time, which would have taken much. I think that people are so incredibly capable and probably a whole lot closer to being financially well, like having that sort of clarity and confidence and feeling safe with their money. I think people are closer than they think they are. But and I think that if they're in that mode that I was when I began building the curriculum, that mindset of like, I've got to go find this because it's not out there, they absolutely can find all of the same tools that I found, right? They could make their own curriculum for themselves. But my job and why people pay me is because I can make that a whole lot smoother and a whole lot faster, right? And a whole lot less starts and stops, and a whole lot less, trial and error. That's my purpose. And my purpose is to be out of a job. So I tell my clients this in like our first session together, about the time where you think, Hannah isn't actually as clever as I thought she once was. We're almost done. So because you don't, my job is to not be needed. I'm really quite proud of the fact I ask my clients to come back about every 6 months. literally just so I can see their faces, and just to check in, right, to just kind of calibrate a little bit. And I rarely have people come back, very rarely, because they have the tools that they need to be able to adapt their own systems and to be aware of their behavior and to, like, they don't need me anymore. Terrible business plan, but really,
No.
really,
But honorable,
so
not
satisfying.
integrity. So satisfying. So many success
So
stories. Well, let's talk
Yeah.
about I love stories. We're going to learn through stories.
Mhm.
People are going to identify through that. Please tell us a few 180s that you've witnessed and had, and what those stories were and how they made a 180 for the people. We're all out here looking to be inspired, right? And to think,
Mhm.
I could have been there, right? And there's always someone, right? Like, I've had people come to me and be like, I'm beyond probably help. I've been struggling with my thyroid for 15 years. And I was like, I hear that so much, and it's not
Elle,
even,
don't you love
yeah.
it when they say that?
I do, because I'm like, oh, well, then you just won the lottery by finding it, because it's gonna turn around. So we'd
Oh,
love
yeah.
to hear some stories. Let's hear some of these garbage money stories turning into just wonderful things.
Yeah. So I'll say that on the website, and any stories that I tell are always composite stories. So the confidentiality is super important to me. So if any of my clients or past clients are listening, this isn't about you. It's just a composite. So here's a pretty good example. So on my website, people can just reach out to me through a footer contact form. And I ask on that footer contact form, what's the single biggest thing that you want to take away from financial coaching? So I got this is maybe 6 months ago. It has to have been about 6-8 months ago. And this couple is like, I'm considering divorcing my husband. She's telling this to my footer, right? So she's, he never listens. We can't have a conversation about anything, much less money, because everything relates back to money, and he just shuts down. And I keep trying and he just shuts down. I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I'm thinking about separating our finances, like getting a separate bank account. And I'm seriously considering, I'm talking to divorce attorneys. So I like call her back as quickly as possible. Right. And I said, I would like to meet with both of you, and let's talk about this. So they had an info session with me, which was very, very hard for them. These are not easy conversations, and he was resentful that we were there, right? And that's normal, not gender wise. Typically, one partner in that couple is reaching out, and one is sort of resistant, and that's okay. So what I'm talking about with them in that session is I'm talking about where they're both at, what they want, and what is within their control that is standing in their way. And we come down to what you and I and the rest of the world could kind of pick out from that is that we have a communication issue, which means we have a connection issue. And we talk about, like, there's that old, like, it's from the 70s and 80s, from like communication is key, that sort of framework. That's dead. Like, what we know now is that connection is deeply important. And so they come into it and they said the words that were probably the worst you've ever seen, Hannah. And I'm like, absolutely not even close. Right. But they're both hurting, and they're both feeling unsafe, and they're both feeling unheard. And they got into a little bit of that little, I don't know, Elle, if you've ever been in a relationship of any kind where you basically have the same conversation, the same argument over and over and over and over again. And they did that a little bit. And then I pulled them in and I said, is that the same conversation that you have all the time?
Right, that goes nowhere.
It goes nowhere.
That's what I call a non-versation.
And I said, oh, can I steal that? That's beautiful.
Well, I mean, you got to credit. I did publish it as a chapter.
Okay. I will definitely
give a shout out to me, and yeah, you can use it. But conversations are conversations that go nowhere, and you know it before you enter it because you've had a million times. And they all go the same way. So,
and it's so fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say with this couple that we're going to begin talking about the conversation itself, and we're going to kind of break it down. We're going to diagram that conversation, which sounds boring, but it really hurts sometimes. It really cuts close. But we do all of that in a very, very safe way. And I typically don't allow a lot of argument during my sessions. I'll typically flag them and stop them with permission. Of course, like I'll ask permission beforehand. If I feel like I need to interrupt you, how do you want me to do that kind of a thing? I'm big on consent. And we're going to begin sort of working on one of that first tool that we talked about, awareness without judgment, being aware of that conversation. That is brilliant. We're going to work on the awareness first. And sometimes that awareness is enough to interrupt and kind of just slow it down. And then we will work on some prevention tools for that conversation, like to prevent us from getting there in the first place. And then we will work on some recovery tools to recover from the thousands and thousands of times that conversation has just railroad over the two of them. One of the weirdest things I do is I have them name that conversation. And it could be about anything, right? It could be about shoes. It could be about eating out. It could be about camping trips, but it's the same conversation. Like I have them give that conversation an actual human name. And by doing that, we are kind of making a distinction between like partner A is not the problem. Partner B is not the problem. This conversation is the problem. This is a tool that I've basically baby stepped, I've adapted from couples from EFT, what's emotionally focused therapy. They call it the dance or the negative connection cycle. I can't remember. But yeah, I'm not a therapist. So I've kind of dumbed it down a little bit. And to be honest with you, unless my clients need therapy, my dumbed down version of that therapeutic tool is more than enough. So we get to talking about that. They go and practice. So they have homework. Typically, I have people choose their own homework. And then that takes a couple sessions for us to sort of work through. And then they begin to have, unnoticed to them, they begin to have healthier and healthier conversations, slower and slower conversations. They begin to like do different things in their conversation with each other. And then I begin to move us towards the mechanics just a little tiny bit. So I'll typically, not always, do something called a target spend. And this is just a game. I don't know how much time we have, Elle, so I could teach you the game if you wanted me to.
Yeah, but, no, I have actually, I'm open. So if you are,
okay,
keep going.
So target spending is a bridge game. So it's not a game of bridge, but it's a game that begins to bridge from the soft skills towards the mechanics. And the way it works is I have my clients choose three variables. The first one is a small part of their spending. And I don't mean small dollar amount. I just mean if we're looking at the pie of your spending, I want it to be sort of a small one, like not groceries, for example. And it also needs to be variable. So not rent or mortgage, right? Because you kind of know what that's going to be, not car payment. So it needs to be a small and sort of wiggly part of your spending.
Like what?
I've had people. A great example that people often choose is like dining out, eating out, like a coffee. Coffee is a big one. But I've also had it be like Christmas presents for myself. That's a beautiful one. I love that one. Other ones is something, usually sometimes people will shy away from things that they feel like they need to restrict themselves on. And then I will encourage them to go ahead and use that because this is just a game. And I repeat this many, many times. This is just a game. You can't fuck this up. This is just a game. So we're looking for something variable. It could be clothes. It could be, I don't know. It literally, I had one rather large family do it for dairy products, right? Not all of their groceries, wow. Just dairy products, right? It wasn't they were trying to restrict themselves from spending on dairy products. It's just that fit the bill. So we're looking for something small, something variable. That's the first variable that we need. The second one is a short time frame, anywhere from 12 hours to 2 weeks, but never, ever, ever any more than 2 weeks. And then the third thing is I'm asking them to choose a dollar amount to spend exactly, no more, no less. What we're practicing is something called expected spending, not restricted spending. So let's say I'll do this for myself. Let's say in the next 10 days, my target spend is I'm going to spend $37 at coffee shops. So that means that in the next 10 days, somewhere in the next 10 days, either I go to the coffee shop once or twice or however many times, but I'm going to spend exactly $37, no more, no less. And what's so funny is I'll teach this and people, okay, go spend up to $37. And I'll say, I want you to spend exactly $37. And then like 30 seconds later, they're like, okay, I spent up to $37. And I'm like, I want you to spend exactly $37. Do you hear how like deeply that restriction is built into us? I'm going to spend up to $37 is restriction. I'm going to spend exactly $37 is expected spending. And there's a huge difference. It changes our brains. I have people come back and like, that was weird. It was fun. I had so much fun. So what happens is like, they have to go through some sort of like, they have to do some like weird calisthenics with their heads to do that. So if I said $37 and it's day 8 and I've already spent $24, I'm like, crap, I got to go to the coffee shop and spend $13. And now I'm looking around the coffee shop looking for, okay, I spent $6 on coffee and now I spent another $7. Like, what do you have that's $7? Do I leave a $7 tip? So that process of people like going through those jumping those hoops to hit
to
that
try
target.
To spend money. Yes.
It's try to
like forcing themselves to spend money. It's like opposite. Yeah.
It's the opposite. And it's really, really exciting because it makes our brains process and problem solve in a very different way than we had before.
And restriction on our maybe subconsciously.
That's exactly, we're practicing the difference between scarcity and abundance. And I know I may never ever say those words and they may never pick up on that's exactly what we're doing, but we're also practicing thoughtfulness and we're practicing expected spending, which is important when we get to the B word. Like, so budgeting is all about expected spending, not restricted spending. Plus, there's usually a component of like keeping track. So how are they keeping track of this? If you go 3 times, like, did you just keep track of it in your head? Did you write it down? Did you have a notes app on your phone? That's going to tell me what works for them as far as tracking. And tracking is something we'll do well before the budgeting. So target spending is one of my favorite tools because it's kind of the first time that people will do a big inhale and a big exhale. Like when they stop saying, okay, I can't spend any more than $37. And they say, wait a minute, hold on. My job is to spend exactly $37. And I say, yes. They go, right. It's maybe the first time in their adult lives that they have expected themselves to spend money. And that changes everything. Like I've had people cry, and this is a game, right? So this is a game that can be taught to children pretty much over the age of 8 or 9, pretty much as it is, but teaching ourselves how to practice expected spending and not restricted spending. It's a game changer. But we can't do that until we've got, for couples especially, if we've got an underlying we've already practiced a couple of the things around trusting ourselves and being aware. So this is not my first tool, but it's the first sort of transition tool. Okay, so we're back to our imaginary couple. We've practiced the target spending and they had a rock and roll great time with it. So here's the thing about why I teach with games. Is it because it doesn't matter? If they spent $50 instead of $37, who actually cares, right? Nobody cares. There are no stakes here. And we'll play with this. And I have individuals and couples who will routinely just, without me doing anything at all, they will just do a target spending challenge. Just do a target spending game for themselves. I bet I can spend exactly $125 in the grocery store today, and they'll have a great time spending exactly $120 whatever dollars. So that's sort of the transition as we're gently moving from soft skills over towards mechanics. And all along the way, So I'm not directing that process nearly as much as they think I am. I'm listening to where they are. And if we need to go back and grab some soft skills, we will do that. And it happens sometimes that we get started this direction and then someone gets triggered and we need to go back to our safe place in the soft skills. I have one client who's recovering from a divorce, and he pulls himself back to the soft skills, right? Because he feels safe there. That we talk about things like hot states and long-term positive behavior change and things like that. And he'll pull himself back. And my job is to gently nudge him towards I'm either moving too fast or too slow. So I'm there with them. I'm driving along with them. I'm the GPS and they're the driver. But I don't have a set path for literally anybody. Okay, so back to our couple. I got off track again. Sorry. So then pretty quickly, we're moving from target spending. And if everything's going away, and I'm constantly checking in to make sure the conversations are going okay, we're moving towards tracking spending, which I teach in a very, very specific way. And then we're moving on to budgeting. And typically we will make that first budget and they won't realize we did it because I'm playing another game with them. So we'll typically make that first, and as we're playing the game, I repeat to them many times, this is not a budget, we're just playing a game. This is not a budget, we're just playing a game. So we've worked through that. And then they come back with they made their own budget while, between sessions, which is so freaking brilliant because they have ownership over that now. And that's exactly what I want, because I am in the process at that point. If we're that far, I am in the process of working myself out of a job. So then we're working on the budget. And at that point, we're probably meeting about monthly. We're working on what's called iterative development, which is a phrase that I stole from software developers, sort of building software development, enunciation. We're building change right into that budget because it has to adapt and change with their lives. So we're fine tuning what that looks like for them. And then by the last couple sessions, they're like, I'm an accessory at that point. I'm just in the room. I'm watching their conversations. And I'll flag anything that I feel if there's something we need to talk about. But for the most part, we haven't made it that far if there's something of giant concern. And then we get to our last session. And then that's sort of heartbreaking and lovely and delightful all at the same time. And they there's usually there's some trepidation, like, oh my God, can we really do this without you? Like, yeah, you got this. And then I ask them to come back about every 6 months for a little check-in. But for the most part, I know my clients are doing great if they don't need me anymore. So did that sort of that was quite fast. Did that help? Was that what you needed, Elle?
Brush through there. I would love to hear about some common money stories, just rattle off some things people say about money and or finances, anything in this arena that might relate to people out there and go, ooh, that's me, that might, in your opinion, are a little bit like self-destructive, whether there'd be like negative accidental affirmations about money or right, there's always those like, well, money doesn't grow on trees, or these kind of things. What are some common ones you hear, or some, again, the vibes around money, the holistic side of it, not the actual mechanical problems?
I would say probably the one thing that I encourage everybody to let go of is the wants versus needs. Just focus on what you need, not what you want. You can just stop using that as a decision-making framework. It's not working. It is far too clumsy. Like, it tries to break your whole entire life up into good and bad, which I'm sure you can appreciate. That's not the way life works. Our lives are far too complex and messy and beautiful for black and white. It's very, it's childish. It's a juvenile way of thinking. That's the way our brains worked when we were children, is that, there's good choices and bad choices. We can look back at a choice that we made that we thought was a need, ended up being maybe a want, or vice versa. It is a setup for a failure, and you can absolutely stop using that. There's other tools out there. Other things that I hear a lot is a lot of beating themselves up, like, I don't know what's wrong with me, all of that kind of language. Pain around like not understanding where my money is going. Like, I don't have any idea where my money is going. That sort of lack of clarity is a pretty good indicator that it might be time for some coaching. With couples especially, is like the conversation around money is painful and it hurts really bad. Nobody feels safe. Everybody feels attacked. Everybody feels like they're being a failure, like somehow we're a failure at the same time as we're being rejected by our partners because they're not wanting to have this conversation, and our survival and safety feels at risk. So any time that if you can dial into your own internal language around money to the place that you don't feel safe, that's probably where the work needs to begin. And don't fight with this. So that's anything that is associated with survival in our brains. If we try to go to war with it, it's going to fight us back. We don't fight with any of these things. We don't fix any of them. We basically accept them, and then we make change around that acceptance. Probably the biggest thing I think people can do for themselves, once they identify, like, I'm saying the same things to myself over and over again, and this isn't working, and this is way harder than me asking you to, like, I don't know, Elle, if you've ever worked with a coach or somebody says, show up coachable or just follow the system or just trust the process. I don't buy into any of that bullshit. The biggest thing that people can do if they want to make changes, either with a coach like me, which I don't know if there's any other ones there until I hire more, or to do this by themselves, is to practice grace, to practice accepting themselves. And that is the single biggest thing that you can do for yourself, is to accept where you are right now. It's pretty much the only way that we get through to changing. Forcing ourselves, shaming ourselves, punishing ourselves, it's not going to work. You're not doing it wrong. It's just a bad system. It's a bad way to make long-term positive behavior change. Acceptance, grace, it's hard. It's the hardest thing I'm going to ask my clients to do. But it is definitely the best way and the only way. It's the fastest way. So did that answer your question, Elle?
Yeah. So you coach with individuals, couples, also you coach for divorce and separation.
Mm-hmm.
And also you consult with nonprofits and agencies. Everyone can tell everyone, we'll put it in the show notes as well, but give us the website where everyone can go to learn more about connecting with you to help them out with their financials.
Go to Your Worth Coach, and that's YOUR worthcoach.com. And you can do /Elle, ELLE, and I will have a freebie for your listeners there.
Oh, well,
but they can reach out. Yeah. They can reach out to me right through that website as well. And they can read every single word of the website too. There's a lot of stuff, especially in the articles, that can really help if you choose not to go to coaching or if you feel like you're not needing it yet. Yeah, I would be grateful if anybody wants to reach out to me and have a conversation. I'm saying I'm a lot now. I encourage people to reach out, even if you don't want coaching, even if you just want to say where you heard about me, or you just want to literally talk my ear off for 15 minutes. Let's find a time. It's all good.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and for the work that you do. And to everyone else, we'll see you next week.
Hey listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products. And I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.